Stop being a slave to your feelings. Listen to me. Emotional control is not about suppression. It is about strategic deployment. For too long, you allowed external noise, critics, manipulators, and fear to dictate your internal state. This stops now. This complete guide reveals how to use indifference as your ultimate shield. We are not here for passive resilience. We are here for emotional invincibility. This is a practical, brutal manual for mastering your reactions, unmasking dark psychology, and installing the 7 laws of an unbreakable mind. Your emotional reaction is their greatest weapon. We are taking it back. Let's begin. The first law, the power of non-reaction, the 10-second delay. Stop. Listen to me. The greatest power you have is not your intelligence, your resources, or your ambition. It is your capacity to choose your response. Your emotional life is under siege. Every time you lose your temper, every time you lash out defensively, every time you let a piece of criticism ruin your day, you are confirming the siege is working. You are proving that your emotional controls are set to automatic pilot. This is the first law of emotional invincibility. Your reaction is a choice, not an instinct. We are going to rewire your mind. We are going to install a firewall between the stimulus and your response. This is your most critical tool against manipulation and anxiety. This is how you reclaim the power you lost. The moment you react predictably, you surrender your position. The people who seek to undermine you, the dark psychologists, the passive-aggressive colleagues, the volatile family members, they thrive on your predictability. They know which button to push because you have shown them every time that you will light up, crash down, or run away. Your emotional reaction is their greatest weapon. We are taking it back. How we take it back? With one simple, non-negotiable behavioral instruction, the 10-second delay rule. This rule is a hard mental boundary. When the stimulus hits, the insult, the triggering memory, the unfair judgment, you must initiate the delay. You do not respond. You do not analyze. You do not feel the emotion fully. You simply count. 10 seconds. That is the intervention. That is the moment of choice. 10 seconds is the time your brain needs to switch from the reactive, primitive amygdala to the logical, strategic prefrontal cortex. If you react in the first 3 seconds, you're operating on raw instinct. You are a puppet. If you wait 10 seconds, you're operating on strategy. You are the commander. During those 10 seconds, you're not allowed to formulate a response. You're not allowed to rehearse a defense. You're only allowed to perform a diagnostic check. Ask yourself this question: is this reaction serving my highest objective? The highest objective is always your emotional invincibility. It is your peace. It is your progress. When your spouse delivers a passive-aggressive remark, your instinct screams, defend, fight, correct them. But if you initiate the 10-second delay, the answer to the diagnostic check is always the same. No. Fighting this will only erode my peace and give them control they seek. When a critic on social media attacks your work, your instinct screams, engage, prove them wrong. But the diagnostic check reveals, no. Engaging is a time-wasting distraction. It serves their need for conflict, not my need for quiet discipline. That's the key. The action you must take is non-reaction. Silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a strategic power move. It forces the attacker or the manipulator to question their own behavior. It leaves them with an empty hand, because the fuel for their fire, your emotional energy, never arrived. You starve the fire. You have a choice. You can be the predictable target, or you can become the unreadable wall. It's not about suppressing the emotion. It's about dominating the behavioral output. You can feel the heat, but you refuse to let it leave the container. You feel the urge to lash out, but your body and your tongue remain silent. This is the difference between a slave to feeling and a master response. The person who perfected the art of non-reaction is fundamentally immune to the core tactics of dark psychology. Why? Because every dark tactic, guilt-tripping, gaslighting, shaming, relies on your predictable emotional investment. Remove the investment, and the tactic collapses into absurdity. Think about a manipulator who tries to provoke you into anger. If you get angry, they win. They now control the conversation, and you look unstable. If you simply stare back with strategic indifference and say nothing, they are left exposed. They have thrown a punch and hit nothing but air. This is your new default setting. Indifference to external chaos. It's not about feeling nothing. It's about refusing to act on the feeling. You don't need their permission to be at peace. You don't need to explain why you aren't engaging. You simply stop the circuit. It's not about being right. It's about being disciplined. Practice this relentlessly today. Every red light, every frustrating text message, every piece of advice you didn't ask for. Initiate the 10-second delay. Ask the question, is this reaction serving my highest objective? You'll find that 99% of the time, the answer is a forceful no. Every time you choose non-reaction, you are reinforcing the command center of your brain. You are building a mental barrier that your past pain and external manipulators cannot breach. You are creating the foundation for emotional invincibility. The event happened. The feeling is valid. But the response belongs entirely to you. You are the owner. You are the commander. You are the authority. You have mastered the art of non-reaction. You have taken back your greatest weapon. Now, we must talk about the strategic stance you must adopt to maintain this peace. We move from the tactical defense to the psychological shield. The second law, strategic indifference, the ultimate shield. You mastered the tactical defense in Chapter 1. You installed the 10-second delay and stopped the immediate reaction. Now, we move from defense to fortress building. We are going to install your permanent psychological shield. This is the second law of emotional invincibility. Strategic indifference is the highest form of self-preservation. Indifference is not apathy. Let's be absolutely clear about this. Apathy is weakness. It is caring about nothing. Strategic indifference is strength. It is a calculated, aggressive non-investment of your precious energy into things you cannot, should not, or do not need to control. Think of your emotional energy like a finite supply of gold coins. Most people toss these coins everywhere, on traffic jams, on rude comment from strangers, on opinions they don't value, and on situations that happened 5 years ago. They're emotionally bankrupt by noon. You have a choice. You can be emotionally extravagant, or you can be emotionally miserly. The invincible person is a miser. They hoard their gold for their goals. Your greatest energy leak is the endless, exhausting effort to manage the external world, the opinions, the moods, and the outcomes of others. You are trying to control what is fundamentally uncontrollable. This effort is a fool's errand and a direct assault on your peace. The solution is not to fight the chaos. The solution is to look at it and say, so what? This is the so what filter. Apply this filter ruthlessly to every external event that attempts to destabilize you. A colleague is gossiping about you. So what? Does this affect your ability to execute your core tasks? No. The market crashed and your portfolio dropped 5%. So what? Did you lose your skill set? Did you lose your health? No. Someone on social media writes a hateful comment. So what? Did you seek their permission to exist? No. The moment you can truly apply the so what filter, the emotional charge vanishes. The stimulus is rendered inert. You become immune. You don't need their permission for your life to proceed smoothly. Most of your emotional turmoil stems from one fundamental flaw, the irresistible, ego-driven human need to be right. You waste hours in mental arguments, rehearsing justifications and plotting defenses, simply because your ego cannot tolerate the idea that someone, somewhere, might be wrong about you. This is where dark psychology wins. A manipulator throws a piece of bait, an unjust accusation, a subtle lie, and because you need to be right, you leap onto the hook. You spend all your time and focus trying to correct their reality, instead of living your own. It's not about being right. It's about being free. When you choose strategic indifference, you stop engaging in the argument. You recognize that the fight is not about truth. It's about control. And you refuse to seek control. You allow them to be wrong. You allow them to hold their false opinion. You understand that their perception is their prison, not yours. The only thing you control is your focus. Indifference is the act of aggressively redirecting your focus to what generates actual value in your life, your work, your health, your personal discipline. You shift your attention from the emotional debt of others to the profitable investment of yourself. Let's look at a powerful real-world behavioral instruction, the value test. Before you invest any emotional energy, perform the value test. Ask, is engaging with this criticism/person/situation going to move my life forward, help me achieve my core objective, or contribute to my mental toughness? If the answer is anything less than a resounding, clear yes, the response must be strategic indifference. You walk away. You hang up the phone. You close the tab. You terminate the thought. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your peace. This is the core of quiet discipline. The truly disciplined individual does not waste energy justifying themselves. They are too busy working. They move in silence because their actions are their only required defense. Your approval is non-negotiable. When you cultivate indifference, you are building an internal center of gravity. You become anchored. The tides of external opinion may rush around you, but they cannot move you. This is a hallmark of the Stoic master, and it must be your hallmark, too. You have a choice. Live like a weather vane, spinning with every gust of external opinion, or live like a mountain, unmoving and silent. The most potent form of retaliation against a petty person or manipulator is not a confrontation. It is your demonstrated success and sustained peace achieved in the utter absence of their influence. When they see that their tactics no longer work, that their words hold no power, their own strategy backfires. You are training the world on how to treat you. If the world sees that emotional attacks yield emotional returns, they will keep attacking. If the world sees that emotional attacks yield only silence and indifference, they stop. They move on to an easier target. It's not about feeling superior. It's about feeling secured. Your freedom begins the moment you accept that you cannot control how people perceive you, but you can absolutely control how long you think about it. Therefore, you must install a practical filter. The news cycle rule. Treat every external drama, every minor offense, and every toxic person's opinion like a 24-hour news cycle. It matters intensely for a very short period, and then it is replaced by the next distraction. Your job is to simply wait it out. Do not participate. Do not feed the cycle with your attention. The only thing that truly deserves your full emotional energy is your commitment to your non-negotiable self-discipline. This is your ultimate shield. It is not made of force. It is made of refusal. A refusal to engage, a refusal to waste, and a refusal to care about what is fundamentally irrelevant to your success. You have now established both the tactical defense, the 10-second delay, and the strategic stance, strategic indifference. You are protected from the outside. Now, we must turn our attention inward to the energy debt you carry. The past itself must be repurposed. The third law, emotional debt collection, from victim to victor. You have protected your mind from external attacks. You have mastered non-reaction, and you have deployed the ultimate shield of strategic indifference. Now, we must turn our focus to the baggage you carry, the weight of the past. This is the third law of emotional invincibility. Emotional pain is an energy debt you must collect from yourself by transforming it into productive fuel. Stop viewing your pain as a debt owed to you by the people who hurt you. Stop waiting for an apology, a settlement, or a moment of reconciliation. That weight is a prison. That weight makes you a beggar. You are emotionally reliant on someone else's unpredictable character. You are waiting for permission to be whole. You don't need their permission. We are changing the vocabulary. Your trauma is not a wound. It is an energy debt. When you were hurt, energy was stolen from you. Your peace, your trust, your focus. You will not get that energy back from the thief. You must generate new energy, using the historical pain as the source. You have a choice. You can live as a perpetual victim, forever identify with the loss, or you can become the victor, ruthlessly extracting the lesson and repurposing the fuel. The difference between those two states is a single, fundamental reframing. Pain is data, not destiny. Your past is not a life sentence. It is a historical document. It is high-quality information about where your defenses were weak, where your boundaries were porous, and which warning signs you missed. The only tragedy is the failure to learn the lesson contained within the pain. Stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" That question only leads to self-pity, analysis, and stagnation. That question keeps you passive. Start asking, "What is the resource I must build because of this event?" This is a historical correction. You are not minimizing the pain. You are repurposing the product. You are transforming the raw material of suffering into the steel of your character. For every betrayal you endured, you gained the resource of acute discernment, a permanent radar for falsehood. For every abandonment, you gained the resource of radical self-reliance, the knowledge that your own 2 feet are the most dependable foundation. For every injustice, you gained the resource of fire-tested resilience, the inner, quiet knowing that you can survive the worst the world offers. Your past is not a wound. Your past is a resource, not a wound. You must perform a full accounting of this debt. What specific strength did the hardship force you to develop? Not the one you hope to develop. The one you were forced to develop just to survive. That is the energy you are collecting. That is the profit you are claiming. This is an urgent, non-negotiable shift in focus. You must shift from the emotional core of the event to the practical lesson of the event. It's not about forgiving them. It's about releasing your focus from them. You see, the person who inflicted the pain is still winning as long as you spend 1 second of your present-day energy thinking about them, rehearsing arguments, or letting their memory erode your peace. You are still paying their emotional rent. You are still paying the thief. Discipline is the antidote to despair. Your true act of revenge is not confrontation. It is uninterrupted self-development. It is a quiet discipline of building a life so focused, so productive, and so centered that the entire episode shrinks into an irrelevant footnote. You diminish the trauma not by fighting it, but by building something larger than it. We need to treat emotional pain like a physical injury. When you break your leg, you don't spend months weeping over the moment you fell. You acknowledge the break. You learn why it happened, poor balance, bad gear, and you put all your focus into the rehab. The painful physiotherapy is not the injury itself. It is the action that rebuilds the muscle. Your emotional pain is a physiotherapy. It hurts because you are working the muscle of your character. When the pain resurfaces, and it will, you must immediately apply the 90-second rule from Chapter 1. But now, you add the debt collection tag. Delay. Initiate the 10-second delay. Label. This is not destiny. This is data. Tag. This pain is the energy source for my radical self-reliance. Redirect. Pivot immediately to an action that builds that resource. Deep work, skill acquisition, physical training. That's the key. You are not denying the feeling. You are denying its claim on your life. You are immediately converting the raw energy of the pain into productive, future-focused action. You have a choice. Be defined by the pain inflicted upon you, or be defined by the unbreakable force you built in response. It's not about being flawless. It's about being relentlessly persistent in claiming the resource. This shift in identity, from one who is hurt to one who is unbreakable, is the final nail in the coffin of the victim narrative. You are not a helpless recipient of fate. You are a strategist. You are an alchemist. You take the lead, and you turn it into the gold of competence and emotional invincibility. You don't need their permission to move on. You need the discipline to focus on the work. Your past is settled. Your future is not. Every moment spent dwelling on the former is a theft from the latter. Collect the data, absorb the strength, and leave the narrative behind. You have repurposed your pain. You have collected the debt. Now, you must be ready for the people who will inevitably try to trigger the old loops. You must learn to identify and neutralize the core tactics of emotional manipulation. The fourth law, unmasking the dark three, narcissist, controller, victim. You have mastered your internal response. You have repurposed your pain. Now, you must learn to identify the external forces that specifically target your psychological weaknesses. This is where we engage with the principles of dark psychology, not to use them, but to defang them. This is the fourth law of emotional invincibility. You must unmask and label the core manipulation tactics to neutralize their emotional power. Manipulation is not a conspiracy. It is a predictable set of behavioral patterns designed to elicit a predictable emotional response from you. Fear, guilt, or self-doubt. Once you can name the game, you stop being a pawn. You become the observer. We are focusing on the dark three archetypes that will most frequently attempt to breach your newly built defenses: the narcissist, the controller, and the chronic victim. You have a choice. You could be confused and drained by their behavior, or you could be an unimpressed strategist who instantly knows a script. 1. The narcissist, the tactic of gaslighting. The narcissist's entire existence is a desperate search for supply: your attention, your admiration, or your outrage. Their most potent weapon is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a deliberate attempt to make you doubt your own perception, memory, or sanity. They deny facts you know to be true. I never said that. You're too sensitive. You're remembering it wrong. The goal is to dismantle your internal authority. When you doubt your own mind, you become totally reliant on the manipulator for your reality. They want to turn you back into the predictable, insecure person of the past. Your counter tactic must be total, uncompromising reliance on external documentation and internal facts. Do not debate your reality. State it clearly and then stop. When they say, "That never happened," you must respond, "I know what happened. I remember it clearly." That is where this conversation ends. You don't need their permission to validate your memory. The moment you argue with them, you enter their chaotic reality. Refuse the invitation. Silence is your greatest psychological advantage. 2. The controller, the tactic of guilt tripping. The controller wants your compliance. They want you to act out of duty, fear, or obligation. Their favorite weapon is guilt tripping and the passive-aggressive sacrifice. They turn their own desires into your moral obligation. "I would never ask you to do this, but I suppose I'll just struggle alone." Or, "After everything I've done for you, I can't believe you're saying no." The goal is to inject a powerful shot of shame and responsibility into your bloodstream, forcing you to collapse your sixth law: boundary warfare. They are trying to breach your shield of strategic indifference by making you feel morally compelled to care. Your counter tactic must be to immediately separate their feeling from your responsibility. Acknowledge their feeling, but refuse to own it. When they deploy the guilt, your only internal response must be, "That is their feeling. It is not my obligation." You have a choice: be paralyzed by manufactured guilt, or be defined by your quiet discipline. Your commitment to your own schedule and integrity. It's not about convincing them. It's about acting on your values. Let them manage their own emotions. That is not your job. 3. The chronic victim, the tactic of energy drain. The chronic victim is often the most subtle and pervasive drain. This person is not necessarily a predator, but their constant, aggressive need for rescue, reassurance, and validation functions exactly like a predatory drain on your emotional gold. They use persistent crisis and perpetual need to make themselves the center of your attention. Every conversation becomes a deep dive into their suffering. They are masters of the emotional veto. If you are happy, they introduce a problem. If you are focused, they introduce a crisis. The goal is to make your emotional availability their permanent resource. Your counter tactic must be to refuse to supply the emotional energy and redirect the conversation to action or solutions. When they present a problem, your response must be analytical, not empathetic. "That sounds difficult. What steps are you planning to take to resolve that?" Or, "That is a tough situation. I recommend you look into specific resource." You don't need their permission to refuse to be their therapist. You are not cold. You are disciplined. You refuse to give your focus, your most valuable currency, to a person who is addicted to inaction. Label it and you disarm it. The single most powerful act you can take against any of these dark three is to identify the tactic instantly and name it internally. That is gaslighting. That is a guilt trip. That is an energy drain. Once you name the mechanism, you see the script. And once you see the script, you cannot play the part. This is mental toughness. It is the ability to maintain objective clarity in the face of emotional provocation. You have a choice. Be the victim of their emotional chess game, or be the player who flips the board and walks away. Your emotional reaction is their greatest weapon. We are taking it back. By recognizing their weapons, you render them inert. You are no longer fighting blindly. You are acting with strategic, emotional invincibility. You have learned to identify those who seek to breach your defenses. Now, We move to the true strategy of the successful, the art of building an empire while remaining invisible to your critics. The fifth law, the discipline of silence, the power of the unread mind. You've armored your reactions and identified your enemies. Now, let's talk about the most underrated force multiplier in your arsenal. Silence. This is the fifth law of emotional invincibility. Embrace quiet discipline. Your progress is not a performance. It is a relentless internal commitment. Most people are addicted to noise. They announce their plans before they start. They post their workouts before they're done. They defend their integrity before it's even questioned. They operate under the delusion that validation equals momentum. That is a dangerous lie. Noise is the enemy of execution. When you announce your goals, you fracture your energy. You give the world, and specifically those who harbor quiet envy or subconscious resentment, an opportunity to plant seeds of doubt. You invite scrutiny before the foundation is even poured. The truly powerful individual, the one practicing quiet discipline, operates like a submarine. They move deep, silent, and relentlessly toward their target. They surface only when the mission is accomplished. You have a choice. Live as a loud performer, constantly seeking applause, or live as an invisible builder. Focus solely on the structural integrity of your own life. The discipline of silence is a powerful shield against the forces of dark psychology and envy. Think about the dynamic. When you tell someone your plan to, say, start a business or run a marathon, you invite two things: superficial praise, which satisfies your ego prematurely, and subtle sabotage disguised as concern. The person who is secretly intimidated by your ambition will always try to soften your resolve with a carefully placed caution. Are you sure you can handle that? Or, that sounds risky. Maybe start smaller. If you never announce a plan, they never get a shot at infecting your belief system. The unread mind is a protected mind. You don't need their permission to change your life. You need only your own unwavering commitment. This law is about hoarding your psychological energy. Every time you talk about your plans, every time you defend your vision, you expend energy that should be going into execution. That effort to communicate and convince is a massive, unnecessary energy leak. It's not about being secretive. It's about being strategic. You must embrace the idea that the only witness you need is yourself. Your internal authority, your self-approval metric, SAM, from the seventh law, is the only scorekeeper that matters. When you feel the urge to broadcast your progress, stop. Write it down in your private journal. Savor the win in silence. Let the satisfaction be internal. This builds intrinsic motivation, the only motivation that lasts. When you move in silence, two critical psychological advantages occur. You increase your own resolve. The work becomes about integrity, not performance. You are building a relationship of trust with yourself. You are working for the disciplined person you committed to becoming. You maintain a powerful psychological mystique. When you consistently produce massive results that were never publicly announced, people stop underestimating you. They stop feeling entitled to your plans. They learn to respect your boundaries and your silent competence. This is the opposite of the noisy, performative self-help culture. Quiet discipline is the recognition that true power doesn't shout. It simply acts. We are implementing the 90-day silent project. Choose one major area of personal development, fitness, a new skill, a financial goal, and forbid yourself from discussing it with anyone until a measurable, undeniable result is achieved. Not your partner, not your best friend, not your social media feed. The only acceptable conversation is an immediate, need-to-know logistical necessity. I'm busy tonight is acceptable. I'm busy tonight because I'm practicing guitar for my goal to become a master musician is a violation. This exercise forces absolute focus. It creates a psychological pressure cooker where your only recourse is execution. It burns away the need for superficial praise and leaves behind a pure, hard substance of competence. That's the key. The work begins when the talking stops. You have a choice. Spend your life convincing people you're working, or simply spend your life working. The person operating with strategic indifference, Chapter 2, combined with the discipline of silence, becomes nearly untouchable. When they attack, you don't react. When they ask what you're doing, you say nothing. They can neither provoke nor predict you. You become an impenetrable mystery. Silence is your greatest psychological advantage. You are protecting your energy. You are building your competence. You are allowing your work to speak for you, and that voice is always louder than your words. Discipline is the antidote to despair, because when you are working in silence, despair has no room to enter. You have learned to move in silence. You have secured your progress from external intrusion. Now, we must define the unmoving lines that protect your time, your energy, and your self-respect. You must learn the art of war against those who violate your space. The sixth law, boundary warfare, zero tolerance policy. You are now a protected entity. Your internal world is silent and focused. You have the ultimate shield. But a shield is useless if you allow the enemy to simply walk around it. This is the sixth law of emotional invincibility. Your boundaries are non-negotiable laws. You must install and enforce a zero-tolerance policy for all violations. Most people treat boundaries like suggestions. They hint, they apologize. They use phrases like, if you could, maybe try not to. A suggestion invites debate. A suggestion is a request for permission. A law is a consequence. If you are struggling with a past rooted in emotional manipulation or disrespect, it is because your boundaries were either non-existent or weakly enforced. The original trauma was a massive boundary violation. Your ongoing healing is the act of never allowing it to happen again. You have a choice. You can live in a perpetual state of stress, defending a porous border, or you can establish a fortress with clear, unmoving laser grids. A boundary is not a request. It is a consequence. We are stripping the emotion out of boundary setting. This is not about feeling hurt. It is about recognizing infraction and deploying a pre-planned response. This is boundary warfare. You must act like a military commander protecting vital territory. The moment a boundary is tested, you must immediately implement your zero-tolerance policy. You don't get emotional. You don't lecture. You don't try to educate the offender. You simply enforce the predetermined consequence. Let's establish the rules for non-negotiable enforcement. Rule 1. Use declarative statements, not emotional appeals. Stop using language that reveals your internal state. Do not say, "It really hurts my feelings when you yell at me." That gives them leverage. They can apologize, promise to change, and then violate the boundary again when they are stressed. Instead, use short, clear, and forceful declarative statements. If a colleague interrupts your deep work time, my focus time is non-negotiable. I am unavailable until 2 p.m. If a family member raises their voice, we will not discuss this while you are yelling. The conversation is over. If a friend habitually calls you late at night, I do not answer calls after 9 p.m. Send a text, and I will read it in the morning. This is the essence of mental toughness. It is the ability to communicate with absolute clarity, stripped of all unnecessary emotional noise. It's not about being aggressive. It's about being clear. Rule 2, the 3-strike rule and the final consequence. Your boundary must have teeth. The enforcement is the core of the law. First infraction. State the boundary clearly, calmly, and declaratively. I told you I will not discuss this topic. I am ending the call now. Second infraction. Testing the boundary, repeat the boundary word for word, and introduce the direct consequence. Since you have brought this topic up again, I am hanging up the phone now. We will not talk for 24 hours. Third infraction, violation, deploy the consequence with absolutely zero tolerance. If the consequence is a reduction in contact, you reduce contact. If it is permanently cutting off a conversation, you cut it off. You must be willing to lose a relationship or at least temporarily restrict access to save your peace. You have a choice. Be disrespected but present, or be respected but potentially alone. Choose respect every single time. Rule 3. The emotional triage. Separate the person from the law. This is a shield of strategic indifference applied to confrontation. When a boundary is set, the offender will often react with outrage, tears, or guilt tripping, revisiting the dark 3 tactics. They are attempting to make you feel guilty for having needs. Your job is to remain absolutely unmoving. You are not rejecting them. You are simply enforcing the law. It's not about convincing them. It's about acting. When they cry, you acknowledge the tears without changing the rule. I understand you are upset. However, my boundary on action remains in place. You refuse to absorb their emotional state. That's the key. This is where your emotional invincibility is truly tested. You must trust that the long-term benefit of self-respect outweighs the short-term discomfort of their disapproval. You don't need their permission to protect your sanity. Remember, a lack of boundaries is how the original trauma took hold. Boundary warfare is how you reclaim your territory. Every time you enforce a boundary flawlessly, you are healing the old wound with the steel of mental toughness. You are teaching your nervous system that you are now safe because you are your own primary protector. Your past is not your identity. It is the data that helped you write your non-negotiable laws. The time for softness is over. The time for apology is over. You are the commander of your own life. The only thing you owe to the people who violate your space is a clear, immediate, and utterly emotionless consequence. You have established your external protection. You are untouchable. But who is a commander inside the fortress? We must now anchor your entire psychological structure to a source of validation that is immune to external forces. The seventh law, the non-negotiable self-approval metric, SAM. You have secured your borders. You have learned to say no and enforce your laws. But a fortress can still fall if the commander inside doubts their own authority. This is a final, most crucial law for your freedom. This is the seventh law of emotional invincibility. Your worth is a fact, not a proposal. Validation is no longer outsourced. It is generated purely by self-discipline. We return to the fundamental weakness that trauma instills, the authority vacuum. When you were hurt, your internal authority was compromised. You started looking outside yourself, to parents, partners, therapists, or social media, for the final, official decree that you are okay. This search for external approval is the single greatest vulnerability you carry. Stop being a beggar for approval. The person who needs constant praise is the most easily manipulated. They can be bought with a compliment and neutralized with a criticism. They have handed the entire remote control of their emotional state to the unpredictable, often malicious, external world. You have a choice. You can be emotionally dependent on the fickle opinions of others, or you can become the sole, unappealable source of your own worth. This is not arrogance. This is sovereignty. We are installing the only scorekeeper that matters, the self-approval metric, SAM. The SAM is a system that measures your success not by results, not by money, not by applause, but purely by your personal consistency and discipline. Your score is determined by one metric. Did your actions today align with the highest, most disciplined version of yourself? That's the key. The only thing you're judging is your own execution. Every single day, you have a set of non-negotiables. We'll define these fully in Chapter 8. These are the 3 to 5 tasks. Waking up on time, the scheduled workout, the deep work block, the enforced boundary that you promise yourself. If you executed 100% of your non-negotiables, your SAM score is 100%. You won. If you wavered, justified, postponed, or sought external comfort, your SAM score is 0%. You lost. There is no middle ground. This binary system eliminates the gray areas of self-deception and excuse-making. This is the ultimate tool of mental toughness because it makes the opinions of others irrelevant noise. When you have a 100% SAM score, a critic's insult lands with zero impact. Why? Because you've already secured the only approval that holds weight. Their opinion does not affect your discipline. Your approval is non-negotiable. The craving for external validation is a survival mechanism that has outlived its usefulness. You need to starve it. Every time you feel the urge to seek a compliment, post an achievement, or ask a partner, "Are you mad at me?" you are feeding the old, weak programming. You have a choice. Live your life as a constant presentation for an audience of critics, or live your life as a commitment witnessed only by yourself. We are applying the discipline of silence, Chapter 5, directly to your achievements. When you accomplish something, you must learn to savor the success in silence. Let the pride be internal, pure, and uncontaminated by the diluted praise of others. This is how you build intrinsic motivation. It's not about being liked. It's about being disciplined. Think of the old trauma loop. Pain leads to insecurity. Insecurity leads to validation seeking. Validation seeking leads to giving away power, which leads to more pain. The SAM breaks this cycle entirely. It forces you to generate your own emotional stability through the simple, reliable, and repeatable act of keeping promises to yourself. This is where your quiet discipline truly shines. The world doesn't see your SAM score. They only see the unshakable confidence that results from relentlessly high internal scoring. The person who possesses true emotional invincibility doesn't debate their value. They demonstrate it through action. When you're focused on the SAM, you are too busy executing your own life to notice if someone else is applauding or criticizing. You don't need their permission to own your success. When you look in the mirror, the only person you are obligated to answer to is the version of yourself you promised to become. Did you keep that promise today? That is the only question that affects your score. That score is your reality. Everything else is commentary. This is an urgent and non-negotiable mental shift. You are terminating all external contracts for validation. You are declaring financial independence for your emotional life. Your past is a resource, not a wound. The biggest resource you gain from the trauma is the realization that only you can save you. Now, that realization becomes your sole source of authority. That's the key. Focus entirely on execution. Let the feeling of self-worth be the byproduct of your disciplined action, not the necessary precondition for it. When you act right, you feel right. It is that simple. You have now armored your internal and external world. You have installed the 7 laws that shield your mind. But laws are useless without the iron will to enforce them daily. You must now define the physical structure of your mental toughness. The architecture of mental toughness. The Daily Unbreakables. You have the laws. You have the shield. You have the unassailable scorekeeper in the self-approval metric, SAM. But laws are useless if the physical structure they govern is weak. This is the phase of building the architecture. We are moving from the abstract concept of emotional control to the physical reality of mental toughness. Your mind will only be as tough as the habits that support it. Mental toughness is not a mood. It is a predictable byproduct of relentless consistency. It is built on small, non-negotiable daily wins, not dramatic, sporadic breakthroughs. This is where your quiet discipline becomes physical. You have a choice. You can let your day happen to you, reacting to external inputs, or you can impose your will upon the day before it even begins. The latter is the path to emotional invincibility. We are installing your daily unbreakables. These are the 3 to 5 tasks that are so vital to your sense of self-trust and competence that they are performed flawlessly every single day, without fail, without exception. These are not optional activities. They are the non-negotiable pillars of your sanity. They are the bedrock of your SAM score. For most people, these unbreakables should focus on the 3 pillars of self-mastery: mind, body, and purpose. 1. The time-bound unbreakable mind. This is a rule that destroys the insidious enemy of procrastination. This usually involves a commitment to wake time and a commitment to focus time. Your commitment. I will be out of bed at specific time, begin my 20-minute silent focus / meditation / journaling by specific time. The emotional truth. A failure to keep a micro-promise in the morning is a precursor to a day of emotional collapse. When you hit the snooze button, you are telling yourself, my commitment to comfort is greater than my commitment to discipline. You are damaging your SAM score before the sun is fully up. You don't need their permission to dominate your morning. This is an act of war against the lazy, weak version of yourself. When the morning and the demons of the past lose their foothold on your day. 2. The physical unbreakable body. Emotional stability is intrinsically linked to physical movement. Anxiety and trauma residue are held in the body as trapped energy. You must expel it. Your commitment. I will move my body with intensity for a minimum of X minutes at specific time / block. This is not a suggestion for health. This is a mandate for mental toughness. When your body hurts from effort, your mind has no bandwidth left to obsess over old hurts or external drama. It is a powerful, physical application of the 10-second delay principle. You redirect toxic energy into productive physical stress. That's the key. It's not about being fit. It's about being disciplined. When you are physically exhausted by your own choice, you feel powerful. This reinforces your internal locus of control, making you less susceptible to the external chaos of the dark three. 3. The high-value unbreakable purpose. This is the discipline that secures your future and fuels your emotional invincibility. It must be a task related to your skill, income, or ambition. Your commitment. I will dedicate X uninterrupted hours to high-value deep work on core project at specific block time. This time is guarded by the 6th law, boundary warfare. It is protected by the zero-tolerance policy. No notifications. No distractions. No low-value tasks. You are ruthlessly focused on execution. You heal when you are producing. Every hour spent building your competence is an hour stolen from the memory of your past. Your momentum becomes your strongest defense. The trauma narrative thrives on inaction. It whispers, "You're too broken to try." Your high-value unbreakable shouts back, "I am too busy winning to listen." Discipline is the antidote to despair. When you are executing your purpose, the pain becomes an irrelevant hum in the background. The architecture of your life is built one brick at a time through these daily unbreakables. A failure to keep even one unbreakable collapses your SAM score to 0, which teaches your mind that your word is unreliable. A long streak of 100% SAM scores is a physical manifestation of unshakable self-trust. You have a choice. Live a life determined by your feelings, or live a life determined by your executed schedule. It's not about being flawless. It's about the relentless consistency of showing up. The world can be chaotic, but your 5 feet of territory, your daily routine, must be non-negotiable, unyielding, and totally within your command. This is the true meaning of sovereignty. You have the power to define the terms of your day. You have now built the structure. You understand the power of your daily routine. But even the strongest architecture can be weakened by relentless, corrosive fear narratives. You must learn to dismantle the emotional code that keeps those fears running. The emotional audit, deleting the fearware. You built the architecture of your life. Your daily discipline is solid, but even the most robust system can crash if it's running old, corrupt software. That software is your fearware, the core, persistent fear narratives rooted in the trauma. This is the penultimate step to emotional invincibility. You must perform a radical emotional audit to identify and aggressively delete the fear scripts running in the background of your mind. Fear is simply the old operating system try to run in the new machine. It's the voice whispering, "It will happen again. You will be abandoned. You are not enough." This voice is not your intuition. It is the saboteur using outdated data to paralyze your present. You have a choice. You can be constantly guided by the whispers of the past, or you can be directed by the clear, loud voice of your disciplined action. We're going to treat these fear narratives not as deep emotional wounds to be explored, but as corrupt code to be isolated and deleted. Phase 1. Isolation. Identifying the core narratives. You must identify your 3 biggest, most persistent fear narratives. These usually fall into 3 categories tied directly to trauma. The abandonment narrative. The fear that if you succeed, you will be left alone, or if you trust, you will be betrayed again. Source. Past relational trauma. The inadequacy narrative. The fear that your success is a fluke, you are fundamentally flawed, and you will eventually be exposed as a failure. Source. Past criticism/shame. The catastrophe narrative. The fear that the shoe will always drop, that safety is an illusion, and that peace must be followed by pain. Source. Past unpredictable chaos. Write them down. Give them a name. The abandonment script, the fraud script, the doom script. Label it, and you disarm it. You see it for what it is. A predictable piece of outdated code. The only tragedy is the failure to learn the lesson. Your lesson is that these scripts are lies designed to keep you small and predictable. Phase 2. Interrogation. Challenging the code. You must ruthlessly interrogate each script using the steel of your mental toughness. Stop letting the fear be an amorphous cloud. Force it to be specific. When the abandonment script runs, ask it 3 questions. What specific action am I taking right now that proves this fear wrong? Answer. My daily unbreakables show I prioritize myself, not external approval. What resource did the past abandonment force me to build? Answer: radical self-reliance. I am the victor, not the victim. If this fear were 100% true, what is the next disciplined action I would still take? Answer: I would still work, still train, still pursue my purpose because my approval is non-negotiable. The fear has no answer to discipline and action. It has no power against the cold, hard logic of the present. That's the key. You are not arguing with the fear's validity. You are proving its irrelevance. Phase 3. Deletion. The power of cognitive counterprogramming. You must aggressively replace the corrupt code with a new, stronger command, a non-negotiable truth. Every time the old script attempts to run, you do not let it finish the sentence. You interrupt it and deploy the counterprogram. This is the Boundary Warfare, Chapter 6, applied internally. When the fraud script whispers, "You're gonna fail," you shout back internally, "Failure is data, not destiny. I am defined only by my consistency." When the abandonment script whispers, "You are alone," you shout back, "My authority is internal. My approval is non-negotiable. I am my own shield." When the catastrophe script whispers, "The peace won't last," you shout back, "My emotional reaction is optional. I will manage the crisis with strategy, not emotion." This is not superficial positive thinking. This is hardcore cognitive redirection. You are using your executive function to fire the old software and manually run the new, tougher program. You have a choice. It's not about being fearless. It's about acting in spite of the fear. The goal is to teach your nervous system that the fear siren no longer means stop. It means execute. When the fear spikes, you instantly redirect that raw adrenaline into the most challenging of your daily unbreakables. You literally use anxiety as the fuel for your physical or mental output. This is the ultimate collection of your emotional debt, Chapter 3. Your emotional reaction is their greatest weapon. We are taking it back. Even when the weapon is aimed at you by your own memory, you disarm it through immediate, disciplined action. You are not fighting the ghost. You are simply showing the ghost that its tactics no longer work. You are making yourself unreadable, even to your own past self. You have purged the fearware. You have built the unstoppable engine of self-reliance. All 7 laws are now in place, forming an impenetrable defense. The time for structure and analysis is done. Now, we move to the final synthesis, the emotional invincibility you have built. Emotional invincibility, the final command. This is it. The talking stops here. You have walked through the fire. You have done the brutal work. You have systematically dismantled the emotional programming that kept you a slave to your past. We started with the core truth. Your emotional reaction is their greatest weapon. We have taken it back. You installed the first law, the power of non-reaction, building the iron wall of the 10-second delay between a stimulus and your response. You now know that silence is a strategic power move, not a sign of weakness. You adopted the second law, strategic indifference, refusing to invest your emotional energy in people and things that do not serve you. You understand that your peace is a non-negotiable asset. You applied the third law, emotional debt collection, converting the raw material of your past pain into the powerful fuel of your competence and resilience. You are no longer the victim of your story. You are the victor. You learned the fourth law, unmasking the dark 3, exposing predictable tactics of gaslighting, guilt-tripping, and energy draining. You learn to label it, and you disarm it. You embrace the fifth law, the discipline of silence, building your life in private, letting your results speak for you. You know that your progress is not a performance. You enforce the sixth law, boundary warfare, establishing your non-negotiable laws with zero tolerance. You are your own primary protector. You no longer need their permission to be safe. You installed the seventh law, the non-negotiable self-approval metric, making your personal discipline the only scorekeeper that matters. You are now the sole source of your own worth. And you built the architecture of mental toughness, making your daily routine a fortress of unbreakables. You know that discipline is the antidote to despair. All of these laws combine to form a single, impenetrable psychological system. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer begging for approval. You are no longer defined by what happened to you. The old self is gone. You are not a helpless recipient of fate. You are a strategist. You are a commander. You are a creator. This book was not about therapy. It was about warfare. We went to war against the parts of your past that tried to steal your future. We went to war against the people who tried to manipulate you into being small. And we won. But the win is only provisional. The work is never truly done. The old ghosts, the old habits, they will try to creep back in. They will test your boundaries. They will whisper the old fearware. Your emotional invincibility is not a permanent state. It is a daily practice. This is your final command. This is your mission. Stop wishing and start dominating. The moment this audiobook ends, the temptation will be to sit and reflect, to feel proud, to feel a sense of completion. Do not give in to that temptation. That is a form of emotional stagnation. That is the old self trying to pull you into the comfort of inaction. The work begins when the talking stops. Your task is simple, direct, and non-negotiable. Choose one of your daily unbreakables and execute it flawlessly for the next 7 days. Starting now. Not tomorrow. Not after a break. Now. If you haven't done your workout, get up and do it. If you haven't started your deep work block, clear your space and begin. If you haven't initiated that difficult boundary conversation, make the call and say the simple, declarative truth. Do not tell a single soul that you are doing this. Let the results be your witness. The momentum you build in the first 24 hours of total, flawless execution will be more powerful than any praise you could ever receive. You are the victor. You are the architect. You are the commander. The fear you feel is a lie. The doubt you hear is a ghost. The only reality that matters is the action you take in this moment. Your past is a resource. Your future is a decision. Your power is an action. Go to work.